Madame la Présidente de la Commission nationale informatique et liberté, mon général...
Madam President of the CNIL, Mr. Rodriguez, General Director of the Gendarmerie Nationale, Mr. De Gazin, President of the Exat Trust, my dear friends, I apologize for the delay due to a loss of internet connection within these premises, L'Île Grand Palais. So you see, we can organize great forums and still be submitted to a loss of internet loss. So this team is not gathered here now, is welcoming you to this 14th edition of FIC. It was created 15 years ago, and you are always more numerous to attend. And some attended the first editions, and there are newcomers, of course. And whoever you are, whoever you may be, you are of great value to us, and we're very happy to welcome you for these 3 days, which I hope will meet your expectations. Second thing I wanted to share with you, France is going through an electoral phase. In 3 days, on Sunday, will be the first round of the general election. This is why no minister will be visiting us. Obviously, ministers are to keep their reservations, have to be in order not to influence the ballot. And since ministers cannot express themselves, national authorities who are under the authority of ministers are not allowed to express themselves either, which is why Mr. Rodriguez, the General Director of the Gendarmerie Nationale, will remain silent. So behind this silence, my dear Christian, I can hear some noise still, and this noise in my ears, which do not necessarily hear that well, are saying, let's move forward. FIC is a great adventure that needs to be continued, and your silence is gold, and your present is platinum. So since 2020, we have been going through a crisis because of the sanitary situation due to COVID, but we met again back in September. And there's also a crisis, but we could call it a war that is taking place in Europe, something we had not imagined, and that is changing a lot of things in the way we look at the world and the cyber world as well, because next to this cybernetic war, there's a cybernetic world that affects the logical level, the material level, but also the semantic level. And we may wonder about our fragility and about how important it is to reinforce individual and collective cyber resilience. Among the many points that need to be highlighted, we've been talking a lot about the logical level we've been talking a lot of cyber attacks. We haven't been talking much about the material level, and we realized that our infrastructure could be sabotaged, hence the need for vigilance and protection of territories. And finally, the cognitive level, the level of data, of contents. Now we realize how important it is, and I had written this in an article. The most sensitive data management system is our minds. There's no artificial intelligence. There's nothing that protects it. Why? Because we might have neglected the main actor for or driver for protecting contents. It is our critical mind. So that's what we can draw from these crises, and that should reinforce our beliefs. So now, the future, the digital future of Europe. We had chosen that topic before the war in Ukraine, and I think it's a great choice. Why? Because I think it emphasizes how important it is to be united in order to be stronger, in order to develop together cybersecurity as well as develop together cyber defense with its defensive aspects, but also with its offensive aspects. And I think it is something we need to keep in mind. Now, this Europe we are calling, and that is present. They have a booth here on this forum, and it will be present with the president of the Commission. We need Europe. We need Europe in order to develop action that is not about closing ourselves to the rest of the world, but opening to the rest of the world. There's a dialogue from north to south that needs to be put into place, particularly with our African partners, as well as other parts of the world. And I'm very happy to see that with Guillaume and the rest of the team, we were able to launch the North American FIC. Why? Well, when we recently went to Montreal with the FIC team, and we were very surprised by the quality of the way people received us and the knowledge of these cyber topics, and we realized that cooperating would be fruitful. And as I said to them, actually, it's like passing them the baton for FIC, and this is in order to enlighten a particular world to see in the dark. And this baton also is synonymous for warmth, and it's very important for us at FIC. It's about human warmth. It's about the FIC spirit. We are here to interact, to discuss things, to discover new technologies, but we're also here in order to share a particular conception and belief of the digital space in which human beings remain at the heart of all debates. If you understand this, you understand what FIC is all about. And FIC is not just an organizational team, the Gendarmerie Nationale, the partners. It's all of them, all of us who are here to keep bearing this mindset, loyal to its origins. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you are the FIC. And for these 3 days, I'm sure you will demonstrate it. And I want to thank again all our partners, all the companies, all the research centers, all the universities, and all our foreign friends who are attending in order to contribute to this edition. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, in a context of highly tense international relationships, this FIC shows a double emergency, an operational emergency. Every 11 seconds, a ransomware hits an organization, hospitals, small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as states. But there's also a political emergency. The war in Ukraine has shown our interdependence. We need to build a digital environment that meets our values and our interests. Can we be content with the fact that 69% of European is detained by non-European owners? But we need to focus on the value chain, and on these two fronts, Europe is essential. But for this promise to be fruitful, the challenges that we need to rise up to, there are 4 challenges we need to rise up to. And this is what we will cover during the FIC. First challenge, so Europe cannot be just a standardizing power. It should translate into concrete actions. This is what we will see tomorrow morning during the plenary session called Europe, standardizing power. What next? Second challenge, reinforcing cooperation at all levels, in all aspects, to fight against cyber criminality, but also industrial policy and so on. Facing very determined attackers, cyber protection should be as team sport. And this will be the theme of our plenary tomorrow afternoon. Third challenge, building an end-to-end security, this last mile security, or if we look at it, this first mile security had been a dead angle in our policies. And that will be the topic of our plenary session on Thursday morning. We will address the issue of resilience, and there will be a forum that will impose standards of IoT for IoT providers. Then digital responsibility, fourth challenge, digital responsibility of companies. There are a number of issues, geopolitical, environmental, human, and companies who are more and more involved in the life of cities should bear responsibility for it. And it is key for people's trust and to make sure uses develop. And this will be the topic of our fourth plenary session on Thursday afternoon. Now, when it comes to all these topics, FIC wants to play its role fully at the service of the European community of cybersecurity. First, FIC wants to facilitate meetings for the whole ecosystem, and I want to thank all partners, Exit Trust, Inclusive, SIGRAS, all these European partners we work with on a yearly basis. FIC wants to be innovative too. And thanks to its partnerships with research centers. And I want to congratulate the winners of the prize of the best startup prize. For globally, this industry represents 146 billion euros yearly in turnover. And in France, sorry. And we need to be active in Paris, in Brussels, and future will be active in Montreal. And so we want to contribute to public debate as far as these issues are concerned. FIC is now 15 years old. It is decision-making age. You just start thinking about the future. You start making choices. And the choice is the choice of loyalty to our origins and to the strong partnerships we have with the Gendarmerie Nationale, the Hauts-de-France region, and the metropolitan area of Lille. It is also a choice of being ever more open to the world. So we have the European FIC in Lille. More and more international delegations are attending, and I wanted to greet Sheikh Simon Raifa, who is CIO of the National Security Center of Bahrain, General Al-Maliki, DG of the Qatar Cyber Protection, and then Mr. Boots of the digital DG of the digital economy of the Dutch ministry, sorry, and Gerard Schabhuser. Now we will launch other editions of FIC in the rest of the world. In November, we will have the first North American FIC in Montreal in a partnership with Canadian authorities, and other FICs will be taking place in other areas of the world. Finally, we want to work on being open to the rest of the world. This cybersecurity community should be more open to other industries, to executive committees, and this is why there are a number of agoras and breakfast sessions during the year. And this openness should bring us to work to connecting the subjects, related subjects, which is why we've organized side events like digital investigation and the ID Forum and Cybersecurity for Industry, and there are novelties, trust and safety, to talk about content moderation. Finally, this openness should make us more open to the rest of the world in order to recruit talents. A lot of people are complaining about the difficulties they face when trying to recruit people. If we want to find new talents, we need to communicate and to show how valuable our industry is. And that's why there's a second edition of meeting with of the challenge with 18 teams that will be contesting and working on artificial intelligence subjects and so on. Finally, we have made the choice of a reinforced team in order to lead this project with Mélodie Reynaud, who is in charge of the FIC organization. We have Amélie for the editorial, and Vincent in charge of international matters. And this whole team is at your service, at your disposal during these 3 days. So feel free to get in touch with them. And finally, as the general was saying, we want this FIC to be multifaceted and lively, and we want it to reflect the diversity of our ecosystem. And basically, we want it to be a place where you need to be and you want to be, rather than a place where you have to be. Thank you very much, and enjoy this new edition of the FIC. Thank you very much for this introduction. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrien Logier-Worth, and I'm very happy to be here tonight and for all the plenary sessions that will be taking place over these 2 days. So, as the General said, I'd like to welcome all of those who are attending online, because all sessions are broadcast online as well as through the FIC app. You have simultaneous interpreting, and there are devices available for you should you need equipment available for you should you need any. So we have French and foreign personalities that will be joining us now, and that will be sharing with us their reflection on Europe. No French minister will be coming due to their need to remain silent before the election, but we have the president of the CNIL, Marie-Laure Denis, and I'd like her to join me on stage and to take the floor. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of FIC, particularly General Vatarogua and Mr. Autissier. I'm very happy to be taking the floor in front of Mr. Rodriguez, who is the General Director of the Gendarmerie Nationale, because we have great relationship with the Gendarmerie. It's a pleasure for me to be with you, taking part in this forum on cybersecurity in Lille, because it's a major event. And why is CNIL attending or present at FIC? I think the answer is becoming more and more obvious year after year. Obviously, digital security has become an even more delicate issue since the new regulation on computer on digital protection. Obviously, is the need for personal data treatment has been regulated for some years now, because it means people concerned are protected. So the regulation that came into force 4 years ago improved the need and the strength of cyber protection for individuals and companies. Now, GDPR is the only regulation imposing specific cybersecurity rules, meaning that these rules are any company or not is submitted to control. of GDPR regulation. Now, any breach of personal violation means we can learn a lot from this. And the first the first lesson is that there's a huge growth of notification of data breach, and 75% increase, and it is more than 5,000. Still, when we compare with Northern Europe, we realize that this growth is more and more integrated by public and private institutions. The second lesson is that there's a growing change of cyber attacks. 3,000 notifications were sent to us resulting from cyber attacks, which is an increase by 128%. And these had been observed last year, and we need to become aware of the fact that all industries are impacted, public sector, private sector, whatever the size of infrastructure. And what you need to remember is that the small and private enterprises represent 70%, 69% of notifications for data breach, and they represent a majority of hacking. We also see an increase of attacks on email addresses, and most attacks are through ransomware, and such attacks using exfiltration of personal data and requiring payment of ransom. And in 2021, more than 2,150 notifications were sent to CNIL. So this represented 20% in 2020. I've given you a number of figures which show how important data security is for institutions and individuals, and when it comes to cybersecurity, the work is paramount and huge between service providers and customers and enterprises and companies and public administration. And so how the Cyber Campus embodies all this. In this ecosystem, CNIL has to protect people and to make sure that these people and their data are taken into account when preparing an answer to create prevention. So our action revolves around 4 pillars: public awareness, and human beings are the first factor of threats being materialized. And finally, participation to the ecosystem of cyber protection. CNIL's approach means that our answer to regulatory answers should also be the role of legal experts. Similarly, security was thought to be just costly and not connected to the rest. Now, at the heart of companies and public institutions, to be efficient, it cannot only be a legal help or a technical help or an organizational help. It should be all of these 3 things. And these challenges need to be understood at the right level, because compliance with GDPR is a tool of prevention against cyber risk that should be used at the level of all companies, institutions, and so on. So GDPR compliance is one of the best prevention against cyber risk, personal data protection is an asset, a tool in order to convince how important security is. And two-thirds of CNIL sanctions have to do with security. And this is systematically assessed as part of the controls the Commission carries out. Beyond this risk management, GDPR compliance is based on responsibilizing companies. This is what is called accountability, which means training programs and procedures can be implemented in order to develop security culture. CNIL carried out a structure on the complaints they have been receiving, and in order to understand people who lodge these complaints, and it was interesting to notice that the professional environment in which they are is the first factor of data protection awareness, meaning that measures taken in the professional world are usually applied at home by individuals, and this has to do with digital security. So I want CNIL to make cybersecurity one of their major action axes. Why? Because risk management empowerment and CNIL and Europe have implemented a tool of impact analysis of data protection, and we offer the appropriate software. And we also offer recommendations to clarify the expectations of regulators. So that means our expectations when it comes to security. That is why we published recently a recommendation on logging or creating logs. There will be recommendations on passwords, on APIs, on mobile apps, and personal data management when in case of security breaches. So these combine technology, legal advice in order to meet the particular needs of companies. In conclusion, and to come back to the topic of this plenary session, the future of Europe, when it comes to protecting data, in order to define digital sovereignty at the European level, well, data protection is at the heart of Europe, and GDPR, was the opportunity for Europe to consolidate principles that have been around, that have been present in French law through reinforced means, through a very strong political willingness to protect Europeans, even if this information, this data is transferred to non-European third parties. The sanctions that were imposed on GAFAMs for these last 4 years, have been creating some leverage for Europe so that share, instead of imposing, can at least share its values. The European Court of Justice has also ruled similarly. Now, I do hope that this protective and demanding position will be defended in the rest of the world, particularly in Asia, in Northern America, in America, when it comes to protection of data protection. I hope that all administrations and companies will be able to raise their protection levels, just as they did when they tried to meet the expectations of recent regulations. Thank you very much.
Je voudrais maintenant inviter à venir prendre la parole sur scène Gerhard Schapuser.
I now would like to invite Gerhard Schapuser, who is the Deputy Director of the BSI.
Mesdames et Messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to stand before you.
and that's the only French words I will present you today, otherwise you wouldn't understand anything, I expect. So I will talk to you in English now, and I'm happy to be here at the FIC to share with you BSI's view on the highly relevant topics of this year's conference theme, namely Shaping Europe's Digital Future. And let me start with a short introduction of BSI to you. The BSI is a federal German cybersecurity authority. Our mission is to shape information security and digitization through prevention, detection, reaction for government, business and society. So a full program, let me call it. And we started at the level of government and prevention, but now we come up with more operational tasks. To fulfill this mission, we have today more than 1,500 employees working on topics such as standardization, certification, information assurance, secure electronic identities, and critical infrastructure protection, to name some of them. Let me give you a brief overview of BSI's view on the assessment of the current IT security situation. We assess a situation tense to critical. At least in some parts we are on red alert. Why do we think this? This is mainly due to an increase in malicious cyber activities such as ransomware and denial of service attacks, which pose a severe threat to many organizations, including local administration, hospitals, and of course companies. The IT security situation is further aggravated by rising geopolitical tensions, which also have been accompanied by cyber attacks. The impact of these attacks are not limited to the Ukraine. For example, in the context of the war against the Ukraine, we saw an attack on Viasat, a satellite service provider, and the collateral damage of this attack was the unavailability of maintenance services for some wind energy plants in Germany, as they were based on Viasat services. We also observed unintended side effects of the sanctions against Russia. For example, in March, the group Anonymous Germany attacked the company Rosneft Germany, leading to a shutdown of various virtualized server systems. The company is a critical infrastructure in Germany, and a long-lasting outage could have had serious consequences. Due to the sanctions, IT service providers were reluctant to support the company in rebuilding its systems. And it took us a lot of effort to convince them to do so. And indeed, we weren't successful in every case, in some cases, of course. In addition to these attacks, we currently observe the attack surface is also rapidly increasing. Why? Due to the COVID pandemic, we had a digitization boost, which was not planned in this dimension. And IT security was not the first topic which was addressed in the highly speedful digitization. Nevertheless, it is important to note that we are still at an early stage of digitization. At the moment, autonomous cars are not yet present in the normality of our streets, and our home office and factories are still quite a long way from being saturated with smart IoT devices. Similarly, our reliance on artificial intelligence is still very low compared to what we will see in 10 or 20 years. as far as I expected. This means that the decisions we make today will have a profound impact on what our digital future will look like. In this context, it's crucial to understand that cybersecurity is a precondition for successful digitization. On the other hand, decisions and engagements we do not pursue today might also have determinant factors for the future. For example, if Europe does not increase its engagement in international standardization, the standards and technologies of the future will be defined by others, and with high probability with different values on security and privacy than what we agreed on in Germany and Europe. I'd like to share with you how BSI tries to contribute to a secure digital future for Germany and Europe. And I have to speak about 4 issues: regulation, standardization, certification, and cooperation. Let me start with regulation. One important tool is, of course, the regulation, and here BSI continuously contributes its expertise to national and European efforts aimed at creating good cybersecurity regulation. What does good mean? Of course, it has to increase cybersecurity on the one hand, but it has to be accepted by the stakeholders too. And this is sometimes a quite different process of getting the correct level of information security, which is accepted as a final stage. An example of regulation in Germany is the German IT Security Act 2.0, which came into force in May last year. This law significantly extends BSI's mandate in the fields as digital consumer protection, protection of the federal government networks, and the protection of so-called essential companies that are systemically relevant for the German economy. Thereby, it enables us to better protect government, business, and society in Germany. This is the national level. However, European regulation also plays a highly important role, I think the most important role, at least in Europe. And first and foremost, from BSI perspective, the NIS 2 directive will have a profound impact on many companies and administrations across Europe. The national implementation of the new requirements and tasks will be a huge opportunity, but also for many companies, a big challenge. This holds for the BSI too, who is a German NIS competent authority, but for the companies that will fall within the scope of the size cap rules, it will also be a big challenge. Through NIS 2, cybersecurity will become an essential requirement for a big part of our economy and society. We all need to boost up. Without saying too much, I think we need to work even closer together to manage it, and that fits to my last point, cooperation, which I will address a little bit later. Another example is the upcoming Cyber Resilience Act, which fills a regulatory gap because till now we do not have harmonized rules regulating cybersecurity for products and services. In our view, the possibility to introduce horizontal cybersecurity minimum requirements into the market and to cover the whole life cycle is highly needed. The Act should also provide a holistic approach towards cybersecurity by reasonably linking the new legislation framework with the Cybersecurity Act. At least for the non-critical products, we want the vendor to produce a so-called software bill of materials to allow market surveillance, to quickly identify potential vulnerable products in an automated way and take appropriate action. Why do I mention this? This is the Log4j weakness was an eye-opener for me, because the first 2 weeks after the weakness has been published was to identify whether whether the weakness was in my product, yes or no. And that's 2 weeks where you were typically not protected, and you couldn't start to come up with patches or whatsoever. You didn't know whether you have to patch. And that's a status which has to be changed, and therefore we push the action to come up with software builds of material as a mandatory thing for IT products in the future. Nevertheless, I am looking forward to the publication of the first draft of this act later this year. And sometimes I have the impression that the EU Commission does not pay enough attention to ensuring this kind of coherence between different regulations or proposals touching on cybersecurity. We have the NIS, we have the mentioned Cyber Resilience Act, we have the Cybersecurity Act itself, we have in the context on the NLF, the Radio Equipment Directive and so on, and they have to be harmonized, or at least coherence. There has to be coherence in the requirements in the different regulations. Another noteworthy initiative is a proposal of the proposal published by the European Commission in March 2022 on the new roles to establish common cybersecurity and information security measures across EU bodies. I welcome that the Commission has finally published such a proposal, but in my view it is high time to establish such a common measures across EU bodies, and I fear that the proposal published by the Commission is not sufficient to really increase the overall level of cybersecurity in the EU bodies. From point of view of BSI, the cybersecurity level to aim for should be equivalent to the level of the NIS2 in that arena. But besides the regulation aspects, national or on the European level, I believe that standardization is one of the most important things we have to do. Because some years ago, Europe was master of standardization. This has left. And I fear that whenever standards will be established, they probably will not fit to the European level of ethical thoughts and so on. And therefore, I believe that we have to engage us a little bit more in that arena. And of course, cybersecurity regulation itself doesn't work. What we need is verified cybersecurity, and the method of which we propose is typically certification. In that arena, I believe that Europe has made a big step forward with the Cybersecurity Act, but now we have to speed up to come up with concrete schemes. I think that the first one which will be in place is the EU Common Criteria Scheme, where I hope that it will be established end of this year, 2 years after finalization of the Cybersecurity Act. That's a long time. Others are in work, for instance, the European Cybersecurity Certification Candidate Scheme for Cloud Services, which I believe is driven by Germany and France. And at that point, I have to stress that we as BSI have a very strong cooperation with ANCYBER, and that is very fruitful in shaping European cybersecurity certification schemes. So thank you to INCYBER at this point from the German point of view. Besides regulation and standardization or certification, achieving an adequate level of cybersecurity also has less tangible elements. And this is my last point, cooperation. I believe that good cybersecurity needs a holistic view, and that can only be done if we work together on the one hand side. But we have to trust each other. And therefore, at least for BSI, it's an important issue for us to come up with close and trustful relationships to foster the cooperation to come up with good cybersecurity architectures, methodologies, criteria, and of course also regulation. And having said that, I would like to summarize my talk with a message. To develop trust, we need interaction. And therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the French presidency of the Council of the European Union. Thank you for putting so much effort into organizing in-person meetings of the various cybersecurity networks during your presidency. From what I've heard, they were a big success and a welcome opportunity to network after the long break caused by COVID-19. Along the same line, I would like to commend the organizers of the FIC on organizing this great event and bringing together so many people from the cybersecurity ecosystem. I wish you all a fruitful conference, fruitful discussions, and insights in the next few days. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your words. The next personality I'd like to welcome on stage now is Michiel Boots, General Economic Policy Director and Chief Economist at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy of the Netherlands.
Excellence, Monsieur le Général, Monsieur Tissier.
Excellency, Mr. Tissier, dear guest, dear colleagues, dear French partners, thank you very much for your warm welcome here in this metropolis of Lille, in this 90s building, which is right at the center of the city, which is also hyper-modular. And this is how we see the innovations of this era. And this is how we see the European opportunities in the digital era, the cloud, artificial intelligence, and their defense. I am very happy, and this is an honor for me to take the floor here on this podium. We've had a recent collaboration between the FIC and the Dutch FIC. If you allow me, I would like to continue in English.
To better secure the digital economy and invest in it. Let me explore that with you. You may be aware that we Dutch have dealt with water-related dilemmas for centuries. How to drain and direct water away from the polders. How to keep our feet dry. It shaped our mindset, a mindset that we now consider to be effective in any domain, including that of cyber resilience, which we are here to discuss today. Well, summarized by the saying, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. It is my personal belief, too, that it is best to join hands and seek agreement on what's essential and what's urgent. Just a small example of what this looks like. In the Netherlands, we have a platform called INCYBER. Not a particularly big platform, perhaps, but we still consider this to be our own our homegrown Grand Palais of cooperation, a platform where modular activities like supply and demand, fundamental research, innovative applications merge, where authorities, businesses, and academia co-conduct fundamental research and involve potential users at an early stage. INCYBER's director, Eddie Boot, is here today, and he would love to tell you more about it. INCYBER is one of just many initiatives that derive from our national policy. The ministry has adopted a holistic approach that builds on the fundamentals of cybersecurity and favors the national digital climate. So we will continue to invite international businesses, small and medium-sized enterprises, and their consumers to cooperate. We also promote research and development. We raise awareness for security, create legislation, share information, prevent and respond to incidents at many levels. Let me give you another example of how efforts interlock. Half a year ago, several businesses were put at risk by weak spots in their Log4j software. Two institutions, our National Cybersecurity Center and the Digital Trust Center, instantly joined efforts to warn and advise these businesses at an early stage. The businesses responded to that, and the result was a thumb in the dike, protecting those businesses and society against a sea of troubles. Of course, this is not the only route for vital information to reach the arteries of our economy, and there are more benefits to cooperation like this. This is how knowledge, vigilance, and confidence can grow too. However, we must look beyond the dikes, beyond our borders, if we want to meet today's challenges, because we are in an ever-evolving domain that knows no borders at all, a domain where shared values and market forces sometimes collide. And again, cooperation is the way to go here. France currently holds the gavel of the EU Council, and we highly value the choice of the French government to make the digital transition a top priority, just as we value how France cooperates with the Netherlands on reaching a common level of cybersecurity within the EU. On top of that, EU members now endorse the importance of a resilient public and private sector that has the capacity to respond to incidents. Digital markets will certainly benefit from that common understanding too. We cooperate with each other on the Digital Markets Act, which increases fairness and the ability to compete in our digital markets. And we are lobbying for a Cyber Resilience Act that will set standards for digital products, processes, and services. And this September, the European Commission plans to publish that act. It is worth noting, too, that ties between Paris and The Hague have strengthened over the last few years. And it remains crucial that policymakers, decision makers, and technical experts can reflect on what binds and bothers them. You shared your best practices here at consecutive FICs and at one conferences in The Hague over the last 3 years. You called upon France, the Netherlands, and other countries, and upon European tech enterprises to take stances, entered into alliances, and put forward ideas. Cooperative architectures like these are powerful generators of opportunities. We can never face today's challenges nor imagine the future of our societies without them. The Dutch government will certainly continue to seek for partnerships, be they on technologies, on research, on cybersecurity, or how to regain control over our data and networks. And, mesdames et messieurs, nous sommes tellement nombreux.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are so many. I hope that at the end of the day, we will have a digital market that will allow our citizens to develop their potential, that will allow companies to innovate, and that will allow all of us to be well equipped to face the future of Europe. I would like to invite you to the next one conference that will take place in October in The Hague. Let's not forget that the happiness is to be found on the market. Thank you very much. I wish you a very fruitful meeting.
Merci beaucoup, Michel Boots, et pardonnez-moi de vous avoir introduit en anglais. Votre Votre maîtrise du français est impeccable.
My apologies, I introduced you in English, but you speak French very well. I now would like to invite Jean-Noël de Galzin, CEO of Wallix Exatrust.
Exatrust regroupe 80 entreprises, des startups, des PME, des ETI, de la cybersécurité et du cloud de confiance, à peu près 1 milliard d'euros de chiffre d'affaires et 4000 personnes. L'ambition d'Exatrust, c'est de fédérer 200 entreprises de la cybersécurité, du cloud, du digital workplace, pour faire en sorte de faire émerger d'ici 2025 une filière du numérique de confiance. Les actions d'Exatrust, c'est d'abord la visibilité de nos membres, faire en sorte que les intérêts de nos membres soient mis au cœur des préoccupations de la filière, animer la stratégie nationale d'accélération cyber et faire en sorte, à travers des actions mutualisées, de faire rayonner notre offre pour en faire une offre de rang mondial. Exatrust est membre fondateur et actionnaire du campus cyber. L'association sera présente à l'intérieur du campus pour y animer un certain nombre de groupes de travail, d'actions et faire en sorte de faire rayonner les startups, les ETI et les PME de la cybersécurité et du cloud au sein de cette vitrine de la cybersécurité française. Rejoindre Exatrust, c'est faire en sorte de participer à l'élaboration de l'offre cybersécurité souveraine en matière de cybersécurité, de cloud, et faire en sorte de représenter ce qui se fait de mieux dans ce domaine en France et dans le monde entier.
Jean-Noël de Galzin, vous êtes partout sur tous les écrans et vous êtes ici avec nous. Merci.
You are everywhere.
Switch in French for the
Let's switch French. Let's switch to French. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Dressons un constat. L'Europe et en premier lieu la France est un leader dans de nombreux
Europe and France is a leader in many digitized domains, automotive, for instance. But in many other domains, it's less the case. So how can Europe face this challenge to become a cyber leader? Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us. So we are delighted to be the FIC partner. We have here Guillaume Tissier and all the team members. I can see that Christian Rodriguez, you were really happy, no intervention. I understand now why. And I see that the CNIL is present here and represented. Data protection is of the essence. It is about preserving our model of freedom. The data are the data we produce, and data protection is really the base of a different digital era. We have the idea, now we have to materialize it. Now, we have heard interventions from our international partners. Very often we speak of sovereignty. We do not have a European sovereignty. We do not have a European defense. Why not having a European defense through common cybersecurity criteria? And to have a digital climate that will be more resilient, that will be useful, that will be used to feed our needs in the field of industrial policies. How can we build cyber security champions in the digital workplace, artificial intelligence champions, quantum computing champions, industrial champions, who will materialize a European vision of the digital? So we have been talking about our African partners, our partners in Maghreb, our partners in Latin America, in the Emirates, in the Arab countries. I think that we all share the same views, freedoms are not a market where we can have everything we want. We need to protect our freedoms. So yes, we have created major industrial champions. We know that we have regulations. The GDPR is one of them, directives as well. This has been highlighted by our BSI partner, the DMA, the DSA, the Cyber Resilience Act. So this is a positive development, and we are the world champions in regulation, I have to say. But I think that the key topic is really the transformation, the materialization, the implementation of those rules. Do you know the story of the goat of Mr. Seguin? So the goat is invited by the farmer. And so the goat is willing to go to the mountains, but the farmer says that, no, it's too dangerous. And so the farmer locks the goat in his farm, but there is an open window. And so the entrepreneur is going to get out of the barn through the window, and is going to discover the world in the mountains. But then, in spite of the sirens of the farmer, the goat will stay in the mountain, and it will be eaten and killed by the wolves. And I think that we have entrepreneurs in Europe who would like to build strong companies like Alstom or Telefonica, and in a way, we are willing also to become major cybersecurity leaders. So this is what I would like to see. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing this story of Mr. Seguin's goat. So, yes, I think that we have to stay friendly as well. So, Exatrust is willing to promote trust and cyber excellence. So what are the concrete actions you implement? In Exatrust, we are 80 members. We are present in cyber, in cloud, digital workplaces. We want to bring together the best practices to create a portfolio of solutions. So it's very concrete and practical. And this has been repeated by the head of the ANSI and the DGE. Before regulating, it is important to reach out to users. So we have published a new catalog to present our offer to enable companies, small ones, large ones, hospitals to be well equipped in cyber, in cloud, in digital workplace if they want to have sovereign solutions. Second, we will work within the framework of the National Cybersecurity Strategy published in 2021 by Emmanuel Macron, 1 million dedicated to cyber. Then we have the cloud strategy, the national cloud strategy, 1.7 billion. So this will allow us to work on large sovereign infrastructures. We will put forward major offers that will build our industry. We will meet the needs of users. It's interesting because we have been working with states, industrialists, and for the first time, we have this fund, a recovery fund, 136 million, 176 at the end. So it's not about giving subsidies to our companies or startups. No, we are not interested in subsidies. We want to help users be well equipped. So we present our offers so that they can be properly equipped. We work with ANSI. I hope that they will be certified by the BSI tomorrow. Maybe the BSI could recognize the certification of ANSI and vice versa, so that it becomes equivalent all over Europe. Let's remove those barriers. We want to create an ecosystem that will promote the emergence of key players. We have funds such as France Relance. So we want to help users be well equipped. And then training, awareness raising. We are deeply involved in those activities. We would like also to create dedicated trainings. We should be more inclusive. We should have more women. And we should work on diversity. So those trainings should be similar to us as humans. So we have also another objective, to fill 40,000 vacancies. And then finally, a last priority for us in Exatrust. We know how to create startups in France. For many years now, we've known how to create startups. This is not a problem. Those startups can then be bought. They can be taken over by the wolf in the mountain. So we believe, and we wrote this in the National Cybersecurity Strategy, it is important to work with those startups. Together with my colleagues, we've been able to bring together 70 partners to create a cyber impact venture fund that will help 35 startups in the 3 following years. They will be able to develop in the cyberspace. We have a startup studio. We have a cyber accelerator. So tomorrow, what I would like to see, and I have included this in the national strategy, and Thomas Courbe actually gave us an answer. We have to work on the idea to create a fund of 500 million, 1 or 2 funds, to make sure that we can really help those companies. They will become the intermediate size industrial companies of tomorrow. So we should be able to invest in those companies so that we can really transform this wolf into a unicorn. Well, thank you. This is a great ambition. Job creation, those are companies that export as well. So if I understand you well, all the cards are in our hands. Well, we saw this. Europe is moving ahead. This idea of European territories is a need. I am European. I pay taxes. France is taking part in the reconstruction efforts. So those means are not there only to draft regulations. Those means are there to transform the world into a world where we can live happily, where we can redistribute. This is about building tomorrow's world, and tomorrow's world is digital. So I think that we are not public players. We are budding industrialists, so to say, and we want to dream. We want to dream with cyber. We believe that cyber security enables a better, more resilient cyberspace, fairer as well. So the onus is on all players who buy digital space in which data are protected. We want to participate, and we want to build this digital world in which the next generations will join us to build those new industrial champions. So, you know, we have those nuggets. We have the portfolio of nuggets. We have markets. We will invest on the post-COVID markets. This is about the recovery. We will probably help our Ukrainian friends to rebuild after, and I hope so, after the end of this conflict. I think that we will have a kind of Marshall Plan. So I think that we can maybe copy the Small Business Act as our American friends did. Maybe we could speak of a European Business Act. Let's mobilize industrialists in this recovery. We need to retrieve our data. We need to reconquer our data. It's about clouds, about apps, about everything that will allow us to transform the data. And then let's make sure that those investments create jobs and growth. This model should become attractive, and we should attract people beyond Europe so that we can maybe create the third digital way. And I've been advocating for this third digital wave together with Guillaume Tissier, my friend, and many of you, the third digital way, the digital of the trust. And I hope that it is possible. So let's build this third digital way. Thank you. Thank you very much to you, and enjoy this FIC edition. I will now switch to English.
Sheikh Salman bin Mohammed bin Abdullah Al Khalifa, the CEO of the National Cyber Security of the Kingdom of Bahrain, please. Please. Thank you very much for being with us on stage at the FIC, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here in a beautiful city, and it's a pleasure to be here.
As we just heard, Europe is defining its own digital path, a path which Jean-Noël de Gazin calls for, which covers every aspect of the digital realm. We're talking about protection of personal data, digital sovereignty, the fight against illegal or harmful content, hate speech. What is your take on this venture, on this path that Europe is taking? And does your country share the same aspirations as Europe?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to compliment Europe. I mean, compliment from the perspective that Europe's journey towards this digital space, this digital economy, has led to the development of incredible rules and standards and compliance that has helped us develop our future. So we've seen this change over time. We've seen the great minds that are available in Europe come together, whether it's academia, whether it's the research centers, whether it's private companies, all join together to come up with these laws, these standards that put the citizen first, not companies. And that is what's unique about Europe, the protection of the citizen. And that's why we in Bahrain have emulated Europe. I mean, emulated from the laws. So we've enacted the Data Privacy Act that is based on Europe. We've also emulated Europe on the data sovereignty laws and the digital signature laws. And what's interesting, this is not a rule or a standard that stays stagnant. It develops. It moves with the technology. So let's take, for example, digital signature. A few years back, digital signature only happened on the smart cards. And that was fine 10 years ago, but with smart cards, with with smartphones, with iPads, those don't have a card reader. And the NFCs are locked in so many of the devices. So your experts have come up with, why don't we do remote signing? And that has enabled so many applications to sign documents on these devices, which is what the customer wants. Now, obviously, tech companies don't like that. They don't like to be told what you should do. They don't want to be guided in any way or manner and say, you are making innovation difficult. But no, what Europe has done is show that they can be innovative and still protect the citizens. So again, I want to reiterate, you've done a spectacular job, and we, in our region, look to emulate it. For example, we expect that Bahrain should release in Q2 of 2023 an SC-compliant digital signature based on the European standards. So that is an example of how not only the Middle East, but the whole world can benefit for the experience that you guys have. And that's the economic opportunity, where European companies can be first to market with that kind of standard.
Nonetheless, the digital transformation, and you gave an example of new uses, that exponentially increases our attack surface to the point that it could be the resilience of our societies that's at stake. How do you tackle this challenge? What's your approach to this challenge?
So obviously, technology is going to be everywhere, right? We've seen the smart card, we've smartphones, we've seen the iPads. Now we're going to get connected homes, the connected car, and obviously our connected healthcare systems, the technologies that monitor our hearts, inject our drugs into the system, onto the patient. That has increased the surface area so much bigger. And we look to the world, honestly, we look to the world for what we should do. There are experts everywhere. There are research centers, and I said academia that can, find the right path. And I think this is where Europe should play a leading role. And if there is that standard, and we will continue to look for that standard, that we can use to protect our environment, to protect our citizen, then we will standardize, we'll put in the right laws, we'll accept the standard, and we'll make sure that the standard is complied with. And that is one way. The second mechanism is really to have the right infrastructure, an infrastructure that is resilient to cyber attacks, that we can be vigilant and monitor and be able to make sure that they are defensible infrastructure at private entities, but also at the citizen, because you want security is expensive. So how can the small companies, the small shops protect themselves? And make sure that we have to have security for all at an affordable price for everyone. And lastly, we need to continue expanding our awareness programs, invest in our citizens in building up their cyber skills, and that is a long-term approach. So these are the three areas that we feel that will help us protect that large surface area.
You mentioned infrastructure, but more broadly, should we go as far as to make cybersecurity requirements mandatory for software publishers and equipment manufacturers, as should be the case with the future Cyber Resilience Act that's currently being drafted by the European Commission? Should it be made mandatory for software publishers and equipment manufacturers? My guess, for infrastructure operators, I guess that would make be understandable.
Even product selection. Our problem right now is, and to answer your question, yes, we need to have standards, and we need to have not only those laws, but the standards and the certification, as the BIC said. That is the way forward. And if those standards are available, other countries will follow suit, will ratify or accept the European standards. So yes, these needs to be placed, because tech companies want to be first to market. And I think first to market does not always mean secure. And we've all seen that problem. And I think by having the right standards and enforcing it through laws, then we will see better products, as we said, seen with the GDPR.
Companies would rush to be number one, but nonetheless
compliant.
Compliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Do you have final words?
None. I think what's important, what difficulty we found in leveraging the European standards is the availability of information and that information available. We had to dig a lot. We had to find the right companies. I think Europe can play a greater role by educating the whole world and saying, this is an example of how this can protect you. And I think, and this is the way to access that information, and these are the subject matter experts. That was difficult for us, but we persevered, we found out, we educated ourselves, but I think we can slowly or quickly onboard the rest of the world, Africa, Asia, the Middle East. All these areas can take advantage of these standards and make sure that force the companies to comply with these standards, the bigger that we are. So
well,
thank you.
Perhaps the FIC, which will take place in North America and in Canada soon, could take place in Africa or other places to let these European standards and norms and regulations be known to a wider public.
Absolutely.
Excellency, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Je vais repasser en français. Merci beaucoup. Merci à tous.
Thank you very much indeed to everyone. We will now end this opening ceremony. We will meet again tomorrow morning on standards, tomorrow afternoon on cyber security. And the plenary sessions, this one and the following ones, will be available in replay on the INCYBER web channel, but also on the FIC app. Thank you very much to those of you who are present here. Thank you to those who followed us online. Enjoy your evening. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.